with me one of the most incredible power couples today. Say hello, Jonathan and Linda.
Hello, everyone.
As you can see, when the camera is on them, it's crystal clear, but when it's on me, I look like a Warner Brothers cartoon from the 60s. So what we're going to talk about real quick is basically mindset and diabetes, the importance of utilizing your mindset. And I have with me Dr. Jonathan Miller, who is a psychiatrist and deals specifically with helping individuals with mindset and adjusting their thinking on a number of levels. But he happens to be married to an incredible doctor herself, Dr. Linda Miller. And let me tell you, she is a diabetes specialist. So the two of them combined will help us to appreciate the importance of mindset when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes, the challenges they face, and we're going to share some of their experiences. And if you can see them, and I'm sure you can, you'll notice that they are a young couple, so they haven't been married too long. Let's give them a warm welcome, but we also want to learn a little bit about how they got together. Listen, Jonathan and Linda Miller, my dear doctors, welcome to Crush Your Mountain Hell.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, listen, I got to ask you, okay, Linda, talk to us a little bit about your experiences in dealing with type 2 diabetes, what you've done in the various communities that you've worked in. And could you tell us a little bit about how you've helped individuals to make the changes, or at least make the adjustments, and why it's such a challenge?
Right. So yeah, I'm a clinical pharmacist and a certified diabetes care and education specialist. So after pharmacy school, I worked in Indian health in Santo Domingo, New Mexico. Native Americans do have the highest rate of diabetes among the different ethnic groups. So over there, I did my training. So specifically related to like medications and as well as diet. And then in New Mexico, I also met Jonathan, and we ended up getting married, and he's in the Air Force. So then I ended up moving to Ohio. And then in Ohio, I worked at first worked at a federally qualified health center. And another risk factor for having diabetes type 2 is income levels. So I worked with the underserved and federally qualified health center. So there's a large population of patients with type 2 diabetes. And then now at my current role, I work for a large health system in Dayton, Ohio for Kettering Health. And so here I also help manage diabetes. I have a collaborative practice, so I can, as a pharmacist, we can prescribe if we have in certain states. So in Ohio, New Mexico, we can prescribe. If we have the agreement in Ohio, I can prescribe. So I see that. And then there's, we're talking about the mind, there's medications now, newer medications that affect the brain. So the brain is definitely involved with type 2 diabetes. That's what we're learning, discovering that the brain is very involved in this. And it's not just about diet too, like other factors like stress, like sleep, other issues involving the brain also affect your blood sugar. And so that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, thanks so very much. So now I've got to get this straight. You married not only a doctor, but you married an officer and a gentleman.
Yes.
That's all right. Well, talk to us. We're going to switch it over then to our dear Dr. Jonathan Miller. Talk about a little bit about, of the importance of mindset, and if there are techniques or things that can be done so that a person can be determined to address this thing head on.
Yeah, I think mindset is huge. I think, being a psychiatrist, you think we work with the brain primarily. And when we think of the brain, we think of, the entity in our head, like the organ in our head. However, we forget that, from the brain, we have neurons that go throughout our whole entire body. So really, like, psychiatry is a very integrated approach where, we're primarily focusing on, like, the brain, what's going on with the brain processes, but we're also focusing on the neurons that go throughout our body. Concerning diabetes, there's so many different things that come with diabetes, primarily neuropathy. That's why I really come into play with diabetes when I see my patients.
With neuropathy, help individuals to know what that is.
Yeah, neuropathy is when we have these kind of weird sensations in our nerves. Sometimes it could be flat out pain. It's painful. Usually affects our distal extremities, our fingers, toes. Sometimes it could be like pins and needles. It could be tingling. It could be itching sensation. That's where neuropathy kind of comes into play. What we found out, from research, through psychiatry throughout the years, is that our mind has a very profound impact in how we experience things, how our neurons function throughout our whole entire body. If we have, more anxiety, depression, more stress in general, we're going to perceive neuropathy as being so much worse than it actually is. And it's even kind of weird to say that and funny to say that because it's just so new. But how our mind is and how our mindset is really impacts like our experience overall. And we found out when we could treat individuals, treat depression, treat anxiety, their perception experience with other diabetes improves overall as well.
Yeah. It's sad too, like patients with like type 2 diabetes also have a higher chance of having anxiety and having depression. So there is a connection there as well.
Now you said something very profound there because we have the anxiety. We have the challenge there, the depression, but you mentioned coming in about the lower income and then the indigenous population, Black and brown population. Could you give us a little bit of insight as to why that is so prevalent among lower income and minorities in particular?
Yeah, I think it just has to do with like the political systems, the systems, history. Unfortunately, for example, here in Dayton, we have it's higher in our African American community, and that's because we had a lot of the redlining. Individuals with certain ethnicities could only live in certain areas, and unfortunately those were in the bad areas where you couldn't exercise as well, and the conditions weren't as great as other areas, and so people were forced to live in housing and those areas where you can't where there don't have enough pharmacies as well too. There's pharmacy deserts, food deserts in those areas. And so because of that, they're more likely to develop type 2 diabetes. And unfortunately, too, with the Native Americans on the Indian reservation, they used to have a different way of life. They used to exercise more, travel more, but they were forced to the reservation, so their way of life changed, and also the diet changed as well. And it's fortunately because of these systemic changes that were made. Now a lot of minorities have higher rates of type 2 diabetes.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, I think it could probably summarize as stress. Linda mentioned, Native populations changing their lifestyle. That's a huge stressor. She mentioned some historical trauma, being put on a reservation. That's another huge stressor. Having lower income, being in these like jobs that where you have to like live paycheck to paycheck. That's another huge stressor. And being a minority myself is like also like, how do we deal with stress? My family's Caribbean. We had the idea you had to push through. You gotta just like push through. You get through those kind of things. And with my patients, that's one of the things that I really try to emphasize, that we have this historical trauma, we have these historical stressors, but I think it's still important to de-stress when we can. To take some time to really evaluate our level of stress and to target that and try and treat it. We found that when we don't treat stress, it increases diabetes rates, and as well as other kind of chronic conditions. So I would probably summarize that to just kind of maybe stress management will be super important with managing diabetes. What do you think, Lynn?
No, absolutely. So on my patients, I put a continuous glucose monitor on them. And so we record their glucose 24 hours a day. And then I ask them about it. And, and sometimes I see peaks and I ask them and they tell me, oh yes, I was really stressed that day. And then, so that correlates to why their sugars are so high. It wasn't necessarily that they had a bad diet, it was their stress levels that day were really high. And so their sugar levels went up. So yes, controlling stress is really important.
So absolutely. So keeping that in mind, friends, if you're listening to my voice, if you're hearing what the good doctors are saying, taking the time to lower your glucose by de-stressing, that plays a huge role. As our good doctor said, neurons that fire together wire together. Now we have the other challenge of the food deserts that are part of the red line neighborhoods in both Black and brown communities, but specifically when it comes to the Indian reservations, when it comes to the African American communities, we see that to be a major issue, a major challenge. But what can we do about it? Doctors, how have you seen things addressed in your areas and in the good old Cincinnati to make things better?
And as far as like income, so like for like the pharmacy deserts, like we have, so I work with like, we have a charitable pharmacies. So I know like the medications for diabetes are very expensive. Insulin can be very expensive. Fortunately, we have a charitable pharmacy. So patients who can't afford it financially can get it free. So that's one instance. And also our charitable pharmacy, St. Vincent de Paul, it does have a place where patients can has like a supermarket kind of like little Kroger helps donates food, so we have fresh food in Cincinnati, so patients can come and pick up those foods. And there is also like a food kitchen, so I know our patients with diabetes over there can sign up for a class, and so that they learn how to make meals with the healthy foods. So that's, I know, so with St. Vincent de Paul in Cincinnati, that's one research that I've seen.
Yeah, I think we're working on it. I think there's more that needs to be done for sure in that regard. Some of the things that I've been involved with is helping communities grow their own food. Where I currently work at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, we have a small I guess I'll call it a little farm, more of a garden. I'm going to say farm because it's pretty big. We have a small kind of farm that we have. The kids help us kind of grow produce, those kind of things. But still, there's the food desert continues. And I really don't know. I think having those community gardens, farms is helpful, but I think ultimately, writing your legislators, continue to get on them about, opening these like facilities in these communities, because there is still a lot of need.
Yeah, it has to do with unfortunately like money. I know with the pharmacies, at least they did studies. Pharmacies tend to be, there's more pharmacies in a rich area than in a poor area. Unfortunately, patients who in low income areas, there aren't as much pharmacy because there's not as much business. They don't get as much profit, or patients on Medicaid, it doesn't reimburse as well. So it's a very tied to money type thing. Yes.
That's very sad, but because even when it comes to growing your own food, you don't have the money to get the land per se, but do you have community gardens where individuals can get together and work to create? Now, Jonathan, okay, you and I have something in common. We have those Caribbean roots. What island, my friend?
We're from Jamaica. We have some Jamaican heritage.
Right.
Also some Lesser Antilles like St. Vincent, Martinique, St. Lucia, those islands there. But my family's more recently from Panama, so we all came down to Panama to work on the canal, and then we came to the U.S. from there.
Oh, man, you missed St. Kitts and Nevis, boy. You're leaving me out.
I probably have some family there. I just don't know them. I probably do, though.
But I'll tell you something. You probably know this from your grandmother, great-grandmother. In the West Indies, oftentimes they'll tell you which leaf is good for that, which fruit will do this, which vegetable will do that. And that's actually something that is global, where we all used to know what foods nourished the body and kept us from getting sick. Do we have ways of introducing vegetables, herbs, etc., to communities so that there is the natural pharmacy from the ground? Has there been any sort of a movement on that end?
I don't know if it's a movement per se. I would say it's something I'm interested in. And I think it's overall something that people want. I think in our culture today, we're very hesitant about taking a lot of medication, for good reason, I believe. And I think over this, the decades, we got away from the idea that food is our medicine, and it seems like there's like a yearning for the population to return to that. So with my patients, I do like to emphasize that, how, our food is our medicine. That's like our first step, eating healthy, those kind of things. I think also on top of eating healthy, in Latin American countries, it's called curanderismo, which is our kind of traditional natural kind of medicine, herbology, using kind of herbs, those kind of things to treat different illnesses. And I think there is a pretty big interest in kind of returning to some of those things. In mental health especially, we found that, some of these herbs that, have been used for centuries in Latin America, they perform, just as good as some of our medications in certain areas. And what you said is kind of unfortunate, because like in the past, this knowledge was more widely available, but it seems that most recently this knowledge has been lost. And maybe that's just my experience speaking, and that's not true at all, but from my experience, it seems that this knowledge is lost. And I would say one of my goals would be to maybe return some of that knowledge as I learn it to the general population.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, on my Native American reservation in New Mexico, Santo Domingo, they did have mobile vans that would bring the fresh fruit over, but often, unfortunately, they would rot, and it would be hard to keep up. So I believe they stopped that program. And unfortunately, like having processed food, which is not healthy, and it's just so easy to keep up. And so I think that's a problem, versus like really healthy natural food only lasts or goes bad, or it can rot easier. So that's another challenge.
Yeah, that's such a sad situation. And the other challenge, it seems almost conspiratorial when you think about it, because you have the pharmaceutical companies, and they're the ones that get the herbs and then distill it into the drug. And now, but that drug now has side effects that probably would not have been as devastating had it been in its natural form and taken over a period of time. When you think about the use of fresh vegetables and hormone-free meats and things of that nature, when you don't have access to those things and you have no other choice but to go for the fat-laden, salt-laden, high-caloric, low nutrition, hormone-laden stuff, that can be a problem for individuals. And so, but the thing about it is, and what I value with the two of you, is that you guys are taking steps to help reverse that. Even as my camera goes completely psychedelic on me, the two of you are still excellent at doing what you do. So here's the question I got to ask you, Miss Linda. When it comes to dealing with clients, have you had any success stories in that?
Absolutely. There definitely been. I think when they're able to lose weight, then we're able to have remission. So they're able to get off of all their diabetes medications, and be in remission and just control it with diet. So yeah, I haven't. I wish I would say so. It's not that common, but I wish it was more common. But yes, I have, and like treating patients, I've seen them being able to get off of all their medications, or even reducing their meds. Maybe they could be on 5 meds, maybe we get them down to 1. So I have seen success, and usually it's with those patients who are able to lose weight that I've seen it in.
So bear in mind, folks, it is completely reversible if we take the steps, but we have to be able and willing to do so. So you guys met in school, and I'm just kind of switching gears a little bit. You met in school, and you have been married now for almost 5 years.
4 years. Yeah, we're celebrating our anniversary on Thursday. Yeah, so 4 years.
So that's excellent. So on this Thursday.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, my wife and I have been married officially this past November for 31 years. So
congratulations. Wonderful.
So, you guys have set on a wonderful path. Don't let anything get in the way of that. Okay. how is that related to what we're talking about? Well, think about it this way. If you are eating together and sharing a meal together, that is a time for the body to de-stress and digest, and your glucose levels are lowered, and you're able to enjoy the company, and you're also getting the added bonus of the positive endorphins in the body because of that positive love and energy that passes between the two of you. We want to encourage everyone to share and build in their relationships, because that too is part of it. Have you worked anything with mindset, like with things like qigong or breath techniques and things like that with individuals?
So I haven't personally, but I know Jonathan has. I think our dog, or we had to he just went to go check on our dog, but
okay, he stepped away. That's cool.
I know our dog was making that. I
thought the camera was making him dizzy.
Yeah, so he just went off, but I believe that Jonathan has worked with with his patients for different breathing exercise, or I've overheard, different breathing exercises. I per se have not on my patients.
Okay. Well, it's one of the things I put in practice for myself, and I hope others to do so. So I can attest to its effectiveness, because again, as you mentioned, being in those high stress situations, it causes the glucose levels, your cortisol goes up, everything is elevated. And when individuals live in that, and just being among family members that may have their own issues and they bring it in the house, that too causes that. So you have to take the time to have the elevated, to lower the glucose, and take that time for yourself. Nevertheless, I'm going to do this. I normally ask this question towards the end of our program. It looks like Jonathan has stepped away. I wanted to kind of get it from both of you, okay? Because both of you are doing work within the community, and you're working with one another as well to stay on the path to health. So I will ask you, Linda, and if maybe we can get Dr. Jonathan back, what does it mean for you to crush your mountain?
Crush my mountain. So I think that just means to be the best person I can be, physically, spiritually, in any way, doing my best. I would say that is whatever step I take to try to be my best, that is crushing my mountain.
Absolutely, very good. And when it comes to dealing with health and lowering glucose, again, we want to encourage everyone to think deeply about how your environment, how your community is impacted, but how each individual can make the change. Each individual can make the change. Now, we're going to ask the same question of Dr. Jonathan, and when it comes to what you've been doing in health and psychiatry, type 2 diabetes, what does it mean for you to crush your mountain?
That's a tough one. Yeah. Maybe, Linda, you want to go first?
Just go. I basically told her.
She beat you to it.
It's my best, physically, spiritually, taking steps to become a better person, in different aspects of my life.
Yeah, I like that answer. I would say I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, crush your mountain. I think it's a tough one. I think it's a really good metaphor. I think sometimes with my patients, I struggle with giving them metaphors because I don't want them to think that this is something that they need to accomplish in a linear fashion. I like that idea that progress isn't always linear. Sometimes we take some setbacks, sometimes there's setbacks, and that's a very normal thing to occur. So I think when I would think about, saying crush your mountain, it kind of reminds me of going on a hike, kind of climbing a mountain where sometimes we take a break. Sometimes it seems like we're not making any progress whatsoever. But we have that faith that, we're going to get to the top of the mountain. We're going to get there. Even when we're exhausted, even when it feels like we're not, making any progress whatsoever. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, I'll tell you what, the two of you are absolutely amazing, amazing people. And I'll say this, okay, when it comes to with Crush, those of us that, those of you who listen to the show or watch the show know that it's an acronym, and the R in the Crush stands for refine and rework. So it's perfect because, yes, not everything is going to work 100% at the time. So we refine it, we rework it, we look back again to see which things work better, but we just don't give up. And that's the most important thing. And too many people in this day and age have given up and and they listen to doctors like I listened to mine, or could have listened to mine, where they said it's hereditary, it runs in your family, there's nothing you can do about it, but we've got the drugs to take care of you until you die. You see, the idea is to take the steps. The idea is to take charge. And so really, I want to thank both of you guys. We've had technical issues, we've had dog issues, we've had all these things, but we've gotten through this. And really, after so long, I'm so happy to have the chance to have you on, and maybe at another time we can get together again and get more insights from this, what I love to call the dynamic duo here, an amazing young couple that we look forward to seeing you again here on our show. In the meantime, friends, as I always say, don't just climb your mountain, crush through it. We'll see you next time.